you ever happen to walk through a swamp at night, humid air, buzzing insects are the least of your problems. Because if you're unlucky, you'll see a massive, moss-like moving creature. But don't panic, because the last thing you're gonna want to do is show any fear. Meet the Man-Thing, Marvel's silent, moss-covered guardian of the Nexus of All Realities. He wasn't always a shambling horror though. He was a harmless biochemist at one point, trying to recreate something miraculous. One botched experiment, and a dash of dark magic later, he became this muck-encrusted creature whose very touch can sear the flesh of any human. But who is he really? And what makes him one of Marvel's most resilient beings? If you've ever wanted a guided tour through this creepiest biology experiment, you're in the right place. Who is Man-Thing? What is his origin story? His story starts with being Dr. Theodore Salas, Ted, a brilliant but unlucky biochemist who worked for the US government. Ted was a regular nerd. Maybe that's why he didn't have much luck in the love department. But he had to be efficient, since he was tasked with cracking one of Marvel's biggest scientific puzzles. Any guesses? Recreating the super soldier serum. You know, the one that made Captain America? This was no small job. Ted knew he was playing with dangerous chemistry, so he kept his research secret and worked out of a lab near the Florida Everglades. But no matter how secretive you want to be, a serum that powerful is bound to catch wind. And thus Ted attracted some unwanted attention from a criminal group called AIM. Ted's neglected young bride, Ellen, joined hands with the enemies to sell him out and gain access to the serum. And realizing that his work could end up in the wrong hands, he injected the unfinished serum into himself. Not the smartest idea. He barely had time to process what he'd done before everything went even more sideways. His car crashed deep in the swamp, and that swamp turned out to be a Nexus of All Realities, which means a mystical crossroads where every dimension touches. It instantly turned him into a superhuman catalyst, in bonding the unstable serum with the environment and rewriting Ted's entire body. His flesh dissolved, his bones vanished, and what emerged was a towering, plant-like creature, made up of moss with glowing red eyes. The man who was Ted Salas was still somewhere inside, but trapped in a body that couldn't speak and barely remembered its humanity. What made it worse was that Ted's emotions became twisted by the transformation. Fear became something he could sense and react to instinctively. If someone near him was afraid, the terror would ignite his touch by literally burning them alive. That's where Man-Thing became a protector and monster, like a silent guardian of the Nexus who destroyed anything that threatened its balance. Ted's mind mostly faded over time, but flickers of memory still stayed with him. Old feelings, people he once cared about, and the drive to do the right thing. I guess that's what made him tragic. A man caught between what he once was and a monster with lingering memories. What does his body look like? No kidding, this guy stands over 7 feet tall. So if you look at him, you won't feel like a superhero. You'll feel the nightmare buzzing in your eyes. His body looks as if the swamp itself decided to get up and walk. His frame is wide and heavy, draped in layers of moss, algae, even some dripping slime that clings to him like a second skin. His shoulders are broad and hunched, like a powerful figure burdened to carry the weight of the swamp on his back. What makes him truly unsettling is how uneven and misshapen he is. One arm might hang lower than the other. His torso seems twisted. His legs are thick and look like roots, and they give him the gait of something that doesn't belong entirely to the human world. His arms end in long, clawed fingers that look like twisted branches. Actually, those are perfect for tearing through enemies, and on calmer days, going through the muck. His face is the most disturbing part, because instead of eyes, it's covered with drooping root tendrils that writhe slightly. There's no expression, no hint of emotion, just that eerie plant-covered mask. When he moves, pieces of moss and algae sometimes fall away, and you can hear the faint squelch of mud with every step. Beneath all the moss and mud, though, a faint suggestion of his old human shape remains. Is Man-Thing still human? It's hard to think a man will stay human after all that transformation, but Ted Salas still lingers behind the swampy creature. Now, his brain no longer works the way a human brain does, because the serum and the swamp fused him with the wetland. So now his thoughts move slowly, almost like water trickling through mud. He doesn't think in full sentences or plans, but rather instincts. His actions are driven by fragments of memory that rise and fade like ripples in a pond. Sometimes, something familiar will stir in him, like the memory of a loved one or a face from his past, and for a brief moment, the man inside almost feels present. But those memories never last. In fact, fear and pain hit him harder. What powers does his anatomy give him? Man-Thing's newly transformed body gives him abilities that make him one of Marvel's most dangerous creatures. Because his body is made of plant matter now, he can heal from almost anything. Tear off an arm, and it'll grow back, thanks to the swamp's moisture and nutrients. Wounds close as if the muck simply pulls itself back together. which makes him nearly impossible to kill for good. His body is also unbelievably flexible. He can squeeze through cracks, slide under doors, and even reshape his frame to reach an enemy. When he moves this way, it looks like wet moss and roots melting. It might look unsettling, but it's incredibly effective when trapping prey. And because he is part of the swamp itself, he can influence the plants around him. Vines move when he wills them to. Roots rise from the ground. That's pretty neat, actually. These very powers make him the perfect guardian for the Nexus of All Realities. Because, you know, the environment itself is his weapon. What are his weaknesses? For all his frightening power, Man-Thing isn't invincible. His body depends on the swamp for strength, and when he's taken away from that environment, he starts to weaken. In a dry, arid place, his mass starts to shrink like a raisin. Even his movements slow down, so it becomes far easier for an enemy to harm him. If you think putting him back in some water might restore his strength, then no. If you submerge him in clean water, it can literally throw him off, because the biology is all disturbed. You see, the nutrients and microorganisms in the murky water are what keep him alive. Clean water can just wash off that magic potion. The swamp doesn't just give him power, it's literally his power source. Another hidden vulnerability is his mind. While his consciousness lingers, it isn't strong enough to fight off magical or psychic attacks. Man-Thing can be possessed or mentally directed by those who know how to turn him into a weapon. And let me just tell y'all, this has happened in the comics more than once. A strong-willed sorcerer is all it will take to hijack his strong mind. Perhaps his greatest weakness, though, is his limited reasoning. Man-Thing knows one thing well: to react without strategizing. Enemies who understand this can trick him towards a target he was never meant to attack. His sense of morality is tied to emotion more than logic. And trust me, villains have used this illusion to confuse him. But despite all these flaws, he always seems to find his way back to the Nexus, as if the swamp itself calls him home. How does fear affect his anatomy? Fear is the one thing Man-Thing reacts to more than anything else, and his body is built to respond to it. When someone near him feels fear, it's as if the emotions send out an invisible signal to him, almost like smelling smoke in the air. His anatomy kicks into overdrive, and the glands in his moss-covered hands release a corrosive secretion that burns whatever it touches. It isn't exactly fire, but it feels like it, and it can melt flesh in seconds. This reaction is automatic, not a conscious choice, which makes it even scarier. From an evolutionary point of view, this is a perfect defense mechanism. The swamp is full of danger, and a creature tied to the Nexus of All Realities needs a way to instantly neutralize threats. And well, fear is the easiest signal to detect in prey. Calm people might pass by him unharmed, but someone terrified will trigger a deadly response without even touching him. How does his regeneration work? Man-Thing's ability to heal is pretty amazing. As we said before, his body works more like a living ecosystem, and when he's injured, the swamp itself seems to feed him. The minerals and water absorbed by his plant-like cells are the main factor in his healing, because that's how he gets the new cells for repair. This process happens fast sometimes, right before an enemy's eyes. In fact, if there's a lot of life and vegetation around him, he's gonna heal almost instantly. It's as if the swamp refuses to let him die. You might feel like calling him an alien, but this kind of regeneration has a strange parallel in nature. Starfish can regrow entire limbs, and some lizards regrow their tails. Man-Thing just takes that concept to the extreme by regenerating an entire body. This constant renewal makes him nearly immortal. Even if he's completely destroyed, as long as a fragment of his mass remains in the swamp, he can eventually regrow himself. What psychological traits are revealed by his physical form? Man-Thing's body tells you everything about what's going on inside his mind. His huge frame immediately gives the impression of something that is slow but unstoppable. He doesn't rush into fights or chase people down like a predator. He has a lot of patience, like a force of nature. It kinda mirrors his instinct-driven mind because he'll only focus on what feels threatening to the swamp. His presence says more than words ever could. If you don't belong here, you will not leave unharmed. His uneven shape also reflects how his thoughts work, which is just like any regular animal that reacts to danger rather than planning ahead. You don't want to be in contact with someone like that. The most haunting feature, though, is his face. Without clear eyes or a mouth, Man-Thing seems emotionally distant, even unreadable. You can't tell if he's angry, sad, or calm, which makes encounters with him even more unnerving. His dangling root-like tendrils give the impression that he's always watching, but in a detached, alien way. It symbolizes how much humanity he's lost. Do Man-Thing's sensory organs work differently than a human's? Well, for one, his auditory receptors aren't where you'd expect them to be. Instead of ears on the sides of his head, they're located on his forehead. Where, you ask? Well, behind all that layer of moss. Sounds seem to echo through his entire skull while also vibrating through the plant matter that makes up his body. It gives him a 360-degree sense of hearing, so he can pick up the faintest rustle of leaves or footsteps approaching throughout the swamp. His sense of touch is just as unusual. His entire body is sensitive to vibrations, like a spider's web. A splash miles away might alert him to movement, and the shifting of air tells him when someone is near. So if you thought you could just sneak by him being as quiet as a cat, not happening. Another major difference is, of course, how he reacts to heat, which is hardwired into his biology. Altogether, Man-Thing experiences the world as a mix of sound, movement, and emotional energy. He doesn't need eyes to know you're there, or a mouth to call out a warning. Can Man-Thing serve as a portal or gateway? It might be hard to believe how a swamp can be a portal, but it's true. Since he's bonded to the Nexus of All Realities, his body can act as a doorway between dimensions. When someone touches him or when he wills it, Man-Thing can transport beings to entirely different worlds or timelines. It doesn't look like a sci-fi portal though. Here, the air around him ripples, the swamp grows darker, and boom, suddenly the travelers find themselves somewhere else entirely. This ability is rarely used in the comics, but when it is, it becomes a crucial tool for heroes exploring alternate realities. In many ways, Man-Thing is not just a guardian of the Nexus, he's a part of it. Has Man-Thing ever created offspring or clones from his own body? Well, Man-Thing is capable of producing entirely new life. His regenerative abilities don't stop at repairing damage. Imagine what happens to the parts that get separated from his body. Those very broken parts grow into separate living creatures. The most famous example of this is Boy-Thing, a smaller humanoid offshoot of Man-Thing's own biomass. Now, this one actually even looks like a miniature version of him. He has the same moss-covered body with glowing eyes. He has his own personality and can act independently. In the comics, Boy-Thing has even teamed up with characters like Blade. Why, you ask? Well, serving as both a companion and a weapon. He can wrap around allies like living armor or use his biomass to attack enemies. How does Man-Thing compare to other Marvel monsters? This guardian of reality is unlike any other Marvel creature. Let's see, compared to Groot, who's curious and even playful, Man-Thing is quiet and almost completely detached from human emotions. Where Groot seeks companionship, Man-Thing mostly lingers in the Everglades watching around. Even compared to DC's Swamp Thing, who's often philosophical and articulate, Man-Thing is far less human than that. He rarely speaks. That's very primal and otherworldly. His fear-sensing ability is one of the most unique traits in all of Marvel. Not to forget, the guy is a silent protector of cosmic balance. Who else is gonna fill those shoes? Has his anatomy changed over time? Change is the rule of nature, and as a creature whose body is completely embedded in nature, it's obvious that he has never stayed exactly the same. In his earliest appearance in the 1970s, artists drew him with a more humanoid shape with broad shoulders and a defined chest. His face was haunting but readable, with two red eyes set beneath his vine-like trunk. This design made it easy for readers to feel sympathy for him, as if there was still a man somewhere under all that mud. Later runs made him look far more monstrous. Writers and artists gave him longer limbs, a more hunched posture, and overall just a less human shape. These changes were often paired with more horror-driven stories, because they didn't want to show him just as a misunderstood hero. He had turned towards a more hardcore guardian role. His movements became slower and heavier, and his face was drawn less expressively to create a sense of mystery. Different writers also played with how sensitive and intelligent he seemed. Some runs showed him as mostly mindless, while others hinted that his consciousness still existed. These shifts in anatomy and behavior reflect changing storytelling trends, sometimes focusing on horror and tragedy, other times on mysticism. Each redesign has kept Man-Thing feeling fresh while staying true to his essence. Whether drawn as a nearly human swamp knight or a faceless bog monster, his anatomy has always mirrored the mood of the story being told. Marvelous verdict. Man-Thing's anatomy is a mix of nightmare and natural wonder. Because where else would you see a body born from science but claimed by a swamp? Every vine, every moss-covered limb reminds you he's more plant than man, yet his role as the Nexus Guardian shows there's still a purpose behind the horror. So what do you think? Is he a misunderstood hero or just a pure nightmare? Drop your thoughts below and let's talk swamp legends in the comments. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more such in-depth anatomies. Until then, stay sharp, stay safe, and oh, God forbid, don't disturb a swamp, so we can catch you in the next video.